to look at any material outside of the system that we have. And so it's really a great way to start the dialogue and introduce your company. And it's also a mandatory first step. So it's what's required in order for us to then give you an invitation to potentially submit your full proposal. And so because of that, that is obviously why we would encourage you to put in a project pitch rather than reach out to program directors, because it is a mandatory first step. And it also offers us the opportunity to determine suitability and eligibility. And so I say eligibility because there are some things that the NSF is unable to fund. So we do not fund standard regulatory work at phase one. We also do not fund therapeutic compound development as part of the pharmaceutical technologies. We do not fund work involving Schedule 1 compounds, and we also are unable to fund clinical trials. And so these are really the only areas that we cannot fund. And so if you have interest in any of those areas, we obviously have other agencies here today that may be able to fund those, and we would obviously encourage you to look at their programs. But those are sort of some of the things that we cannot potentially fund. And so I hope that answers your question. If you have any other question, please feel free to pop them back into the chat, and happy to go to the next. Claude, good afternoon. If you missed the deadline for submission of your full proposal, are you required to resubmit the project pitch? Great question, Claude, appreciate it. And so a project pitch invitation is actually valid for 12 calendar months from the date of invitation. And so you have a full year and multiple submission windows within that year to be able to submit your proposal. So if you miss the deadline for one of our submission windows, there should be another window that will open the very next day. And into that next window, you can submit your proposal at any time, as long as your project pitch is valid, which, as I say, is for 12 calendar months. And so if you miss the deadline for submission of a full proposal, you are not required to resubmit the project pitch as long as your project pitch invitation is still in date. And so, as I say, that should be 12 calendar months. So you should have lots of opportunities to submit to multiple submission windows across that year. Royal, what is the degree requirement for phase one? There isn't a degree requirement for a PI at the NSF phase one. That we do not mandate any qualifications. Specific degree qualifications are required. So hopefully that actually ultimately satisfies your request. Christian, thank you so much for your question. I'm actually not able to comment on any of the project pitches or anything that's been pending or submitted to the NSF. I would encourage you to reach out to the program director that sent you the reply to your project pitch and potentially ask them that same question. We do ultimately invite about 60% of our project pitches, so about 40% of our project pitches unfortunately do not get invited, especially because of the articulation around what the high risk, high reward technical innovation will be. If you need more information on what the technological innovation and how we define it, it's actually in our solicitation, which is 23-515 if you look in there. And so I would just encourage you to ask the program director who actually reviewed your project pitch in order to find out more information about it. As I say, I'm unable today to discuss any pending material or material that's already been submitted to NSF, as I don't think it's the best venue to do that. And I also think you should reach out to the Cognizant Program Director. So thank you so much. Patricia, follow-up question. Do you differentiate between clinical trials and a study in humans? We do, Patricia. And so we use the NIH's criteria for what is a clinical trial or not. And that is really part of that project pitch process, is to understand what it is that you propose to do for your technical R&D, and then we can potentially have a longer conversation about what it is that you need to do and whether that fits a clinical trial, which we are unable to support, or it fits the mold of a study in humans, in which case we may be able to support it. There's lots of clinical work and clinical studies that we are able to support. We just cannot support clinical trials. So I hope that addresses your question. Alex, what is a typical timeline for communication after a project pitch has been submitted and the deadline is passed? It's a bit of a confusing question, Alex. I apologize. I think your question is how long does it take us to respond to project pitches? And it could take us up to 4 weeks to respond to a project pitch. And so that project pitch process typically is designed to allow us to give relatively rapid feedback in a month to determine suitability and eligibility to then go on and submit a new phase one. Sam, hi Alistair, thanks for the information for the POC phase one. I noticed the letter of support by end users is Hi, so I appreciate that the question. Can you elaborate on the expectations of a letter? So the letters of support are actually they're not required. They're actually just strongly recommended and in a NSF phase one. And those letters of support are really designed to substantiate things that you would like to tell to the reviewers that will be looking at your proposal. And so those reviewers of your proposal will be looking at those potential letters of support because they will be able to validate something that you are obviously trying to address in your proposal, whether that's an unmet need or whether that's the potential for future investment or that's the potential for organizations to want to work with you or provide you with other services or other support. These are all the opportunities where letters of support can be utilized in order to validate that independence. So at phase one, we allow up to 3 letters of support. And so that's kind of, I hope that answers your question. Next question comes in from Kathy. Do you support drug development? Kathy, I'm afraid we do not. So our pharmaceutical technologies portfolio at the NSF no longer will support drug development. It will support drug discovery, it will support manufacturing, it will support a range of other pharmaceutical technologies, but actually development of therapeutic molecules is not something that the NSF SBRS TTR program supports at this time. Christian, I have 2 medical devices. I appreciate you putting into the chat what products you have. What I would strongly urge you to do is actually to put in a project pitch. I'm unable to tell you whether this is a good fit for an NSF digital health category or not based on the description that you provided. And so I'd encourage you to put in a project pitch to the area you think is closest. And I will work very closely with my colleagues, my other program director colleagues behind the scenes, to make certain that we direct your project pitch into where we believe the innovation is and where it's going to fit the best. It's also a mandatory first step. And so I'm not really able to live give you feedback on whether you're a good fit or not for the NSF digital health category. I would prefer to look at that project pitch and know a little bit more about you and your team and your company and your market. So if you need to, I can drop the link into the chat function, or you can just email me at amonk@nsf.gov and I'll be able to direct you to where the project pitch is, and you will be able to submit your innovation, and then hopefully within a couple of weeks, up to 4 weeks, you should be able to get some initial feedback on suitability and eligibility, and perhaps even an invitation to put in an NSF phase one proposal if you'd like to. Next question, Kurt. Do you support animal health technologies like a livestock therapeutic? So, Kurt, great question. We do support animal health technologies, and that would fall under a colleague of mine, Dr. Eric Pierstor's portfolio in biological technologies. He has a section on animal health. If you're specifically talking about a therapeutic development for animal health, we do not, under pharmaceutical technologies, we no longer support the development of therapeutic molecules. And so that's something that you would want to talk to Dr. Eric Pierstorf about, or alternatively, you would put in a project pitch so we can determine what it is that you're actually trying to develop and whether that would fit the suitability and eligibility for the program. Next question comes in from Federico. Can you clarify the difference between a technology being technically feasible and or reducing technical risk versus incremental product development tasks? I appreciate the question, Federico. As we're in the health section for the NSF SBRS TTR, I think the easiest way that I can probably do that is to answer your question, is to give you some information, and so you could probably see. So for an example, incremental development products would be, for instance, if you were planning to do all sorts of biotox studies for medical devices, or you were doing a lot of preclinical work that is absolutely incremental because it's the same protocol that we all have to run for ADME studies or for safety or for compatibility. These are using standard protocols. They are obviously required by the FDA, but there is obviously no technical risk in there to be de-risked. It is a standard protocol test that you will need to do in order to get FDA clearance. So that would fall under something like incremental product development, as opposed to, high risk technical development that has a high chance of failure, that people in the experts in the field would agree has a high likelihood of failure, which is what gives it the technical risk. So I hope that answers your questions. Next question comes in from Jonas. Hi, cognitive tasks applied to humans like questionnaires. Again, I appreciate your question, Jonas. I'm not in a great position to tell you whether it would or wouldn't be a clinical study. If you would like to put in a project pitch, we can obviously look at what it is you're actually planning to do and how you're planning to do it. And then the program director, whichever area, if it's my area, I'll obviously look at it. Will then be able to provide you with feedback, moves from diagnostics all the way through to actual devices, as well as biomedical applications, so polymers, pharmaceutical manufacturing, pharmaceutical drug development, AI for drug development, and then obviously across healthcare, we have AI for healthcare, AI for biomedical applications, as well as obviously physical, mental, and behavioral health applications in the digital health arena. And so it's a pretty broad spectrum. So we do a full range of diagnostic platform development. Where you would like to put that would probably be up to you for your project pitch, but it was something that if it was obviously digitally enabled or had some form of AI and may potentially fall into digital health, but if it was more of a kind of standard in vitro diagnostic assay, then you may feel it's a better fit under medical devices under Edge Enjoy. But you can select that when you put your project pitch into where you think the innovation is. And I think, as I said, we'll go away and we'll look at the innovation and we'll try to get back to you within 4 weeks with as much information as we can about your suitability and eligibility for the program. I apologize. I'm just trying to keep up with the chat. They're starting to come in a little bit quicker. So I'm not always able to manage this as quickly as I can. I appreciate the questions. Let me just see if I can catch up. Can I describe the designation of digital health? I'm not sure is what it is applied to. It sounds like a fit. So digital health, in fact, a lot of the topic areas, we have about 30 topic areas at the NSF. So our funding is as broad and as wide as the National Science Foundation's funding, i.e. all areas of science, engineering, mathematics, behavioral and economics. And so we fund all of these areas. So we have these sort of loose topic areas like digital health or medical devices. And so what we've tried to do with the project pitch process is we try to make certain that you have an option to think where you would like to put your project pitch. So it goes to a program director who can look at it. But we also have the ability behind the scenes to actually look at what your technical innovation will be, look at what the technical R&D will be, and then hopefully move that around behind the scenes from program director to program director so that your project pitch finds the natural home. So that program director can then obviously give you feedback about your project pitch, or alternatively invite you to put in a full proposal. And so, for me, digital health would really be smart connected devices. It would be smart connected diagnostics. It's obviously anything in the physical, mental, or behavioral space. And that's a pretty wide space from sort of substance use disorder all the way through to tobacco cessation or mental health applications. Anything in healthcare or biomedical informatics would obviously fall into digital health, as well as anything connected to having smart enabled devices, especially in the use of healthcare and obviously in the medical device or the diagnostic space. So that's a very broad brushstroke. If you go to our website, which I think is in the chat, I put it at the very top. If you scroll up, you should see the link to our website. You can actually look at the portfolio of funded companies by the NSF SBRS TTR. You can also read a little bit about each one of the program directors and our portfolios. And you can also understand a little bit about the subtopics that we may be putting you into, as well as examples of companies that we've previously funded. So a lot of this information is hopefully available on our website for you to be able to go look at to sort of understand a little bit better about, where we see some of these subtopics and topic areas going. I would say I think personally, and I won't speak for my colleagues, but I think we would all say that it is a continuum of topic areas. And so where you put your proposal in actually, where you end up may be slightly different because we may think that it fits slightly better under different program directors or different topic areas. But that's hopefully what we can do with the project pitch process is we are able to then move project pitches to ensure that we try to get it to a program director who's going to have the best kind of expertise to provide feedback. Next question comes in from Logan. Can you discuss the 2 months in the current NSF SBS solution? How will these delays affect? So I appreciate the question, Logan. They're not actually delays, just to be clear. They're extensions in the submission window so that we actually have a concurrent window that allows submission of proposals. This is obviously to reflect a number of factors. In terms of having solicitations available to submit to, as well as obviously anything around the potential for any government shutdowns. And so those extensions have been put into place to allow proposers to continue to be able to submit their proposals. I think the information that was provided from the program was that we will continue to review the proposals at the end of each of those extensions, the same way that we would have done with the window close. And so if you submitted into last November, or if you submitted into January, or if you submitted into March, it would be the same review timeframe and the same review process that would have happened as in a normal window close, which is approximately 6 months after the window close. You should expect to hear more from the NSF SBRS TTR program, whether that's obviously good news or whether that's obviously more feedback and unfortunately in an inability to support your proposal. But I don't expect there to be any delays around affecting reviews. I would expect that time frame of 6 months to obviously still be in place from the extended deadline. So from last November, if you submitted into that time frame, you should expect 6 months from November. If you submitted into January, I would expect 6 months from January. And if you submit into March, I would expect 6 months from March. So I'm not expecting any delays. If you have concerns about it, I would encourage you to reach out to your program director and to whom you've submitted your proposal, and I would ask them, what their estimated timeline for completion is if you have any concerns around it. As I say, I can't really talk for every program director, but I know for myself that's how I'm handling those window closes. Next question comes in from Alex. When you receive an invitation to submit a proposal, but the topic you've identified has closed, can you apply the invitation? That's a very good question, Alex. I don't actually know. I would reach out to the Cognizant program director who was responsible for the topic area. If that person has retired or has left the program, then their topic area should have been passed off to somebody else. If you have concerns around that, you can either reach out to the program director named on the project pitch invitation and ask them which topic area that you should submit to, or alternatively, if you are unable to do so because they have retired or left the program, then feel free to reach out to me, amonk@nsf.gov, with your project pitch, and I will try to find the Cognizant program director who will be able to provide you with feedback on that specific topic. Howard, thank you for your question. We are working on a platform with this sort of focus. Uh, Howard, I honestly, again, it's very difficult to give you information on a short paragraph of data. So what I would suggest, if you have an interest in the NSF SBRS TTR program, then I would suggest you put in a project pitch. My colleague, Ben Schrag, is running a whole topic discussion tomorrow afternoon, I believe, on the project pitch process. So if you're able to attend that, you can come back and learn more about it. And so what I will say is that you have every right to submit to multiple SBRS TTR programs. So you may submit to the NSF, or you may submit to the CDC, or you may submit to the NIH. The only thing I would want to make you aware of is that if you were successful with all of those programs, if all of your applications were successful, it is actually illegal to have duplicative federal funding. So you would need to work with the funders to make certain that the same technical work wasn't being performed on each grant, because that's obviously illegal. But it's not illegal, and you have every right to apply to as many SBIR programs as you believe your technology would be a fit for, or you have an invitation for. So not a direct answer to your question. I apologize for that, but hopefully gives you a little bit more context that you can apply to as many as you want. It's more about your eligibility to apply as a company that would be the only question. But as I say, you have every right to submit to more than one program if you'd like to. Claude, thank you for the follow-up question. Sorry, I didn't get the first one correct. After the 12-month timeline for your project pitch invitation has expired, then you would need to get a new project pitch and get a new invitation. What I would suggest you do is email the program director that originally invited your project pitch. Let them know that you'll be submitting a new project pitch because your old invitation has expired, and if possible, provide them with that new number. And then also in the project pitch portal itself, just acknowledge that this is linked to a former project pitch that's been invited and has expired, just so the program director can see that and can understand where it is that you're coming from. I think that would greatly help to make certain that your project pitch gets reviewed, and then there's at least the kind of histories there as well for tracking for the program director. Kevin, Kevin Altman, does the NSF like to see clinician involvement with biomaterials, or are scientists with relevant backgrounds sufficient to establish can carry out the project? I apologize, Kevin. I'm not sure I actually understand your question. I think your question is, do we like to have a competent team that will be able to undertake the technical R&D? And the answer to that would be yes. As part of your project pitch and also as part of your proposal, we'd obviously want to understand the technical team that's going to be undertaking the technical R&D that you've outlined in your project pitch or in your proposal, and also the extended team. So this may include things like consultants or subawards, where you might find clinicians or you may find not-for-profit research institutes or even for-profit centers, that third parties that may be able to provide specific expertise to allow you to undertake that technical R&D. And so the NSF likes to see a team that we believe will be able to undertake all the technical R&D kind of in composite, which would include obviously your team members and then obviously extended members that may come in from subawards, so not-for-profit research institutions, maybe consultants, and or maybe third-party for-profit services that will be allow you to undertake the technical R&D that you want to do, or a mix of all of those. So that's a very long answer to your question. I apologize for that, but at the end of the day, it's really about how your team is going to be able to undertake all of the technical R&D that you've outlined. Kettle, I apologize if I butcher your last name. I apologize. Cedar Cruz. Can you help me understand what criteria to use for finding an accountant? I can't actually give you what criteria to use when selecting an accountant. What I would tell you is if you became an NSF SBRS TTR Phase 1 awardee, in your budget, you are allowed to actually outline up to $10,000 to have a CPA work with you. Which CPA you use is actually up to you. So you have full choice over which CPA you'd want to use. And then obviously, were you to receive an award from the NSF, you would obviously work with other CEOs and PIs from other awards, and they may be able to provide you with feedback on the CPAs that they're using. But I'm afraid on today's call, I don't have an opportunity to provide you with what specific criteria to use for an accountant. I would suggest you perhaps ask around or maybe ask other entrepreneurs what resources they're using. And as it relates to NSF, as I say, you would have an opportunity to talk to other peers once you became an awardee to understand how they're ultimately addressing that as well. Next question comes in from Brian Gershon. I received a response to my proposal and plan to resubmit. Are resubmissions re-evaluated on a rolling basis or treated as a first attempt? So resubmissions are treated exactly the same as as the original proposal. The timeline actually is 6 months for NSF SBRS TTR review. If you receive it sooner than that, that's obviously great, but the actual timeline is 6 months from review. Resubmissions are treated as actually, Brian, I would encourage you to reach out to your cognizant program director and try to get a decline debrief call. A lot of these questions could be addressed with that program director. At the NSF SBRS TTR program, you do have the right to request a decline debrief call on a proposal, not on a project pitch, but on a proposal that has been declined in order to discuss some of these points. But I'm happy to answer them today, but just for your reference. And so your resubmitted proposal would be treated as a brand new proposal. The only person who would get to see everything would be the program director, but the reviewers would not see the previous proposal nor the previous reviews. And so it would just be treated as a brand new. You'd have to mark it, however, as a resubmitted proposal. And then there is a resubmission change document that you are eligible to submit that would go along with that as outlined in our solicitation. And I'm sure if you reach out to your cognizant program director, they should be able to give you much deeper guidance than that. Next question comes in from Diana. For an early stage drug development company, I'm so sorry, your question just disappeared. Here we go. Can the funding be used for CRO instead of in-house development? Diana, yes, you can. I think that for pharmaceutical technology, it's absolutely fine if you want to be more of a virtual company where you may need specific expertise, you may need specific research capabilities that you would find better at a CRO, or you would find at a third-party not-for-profit research institute. And so there are examples of companies that have obviously applied not as a virtual company in the sense that they do exist, but more along the lines that there's a lot of pass through then of capital to work with third party service providers to be able to utilize their expertise or potentially some of their regulatory clearances in order to do some of the work that you may need to do. So that's absolutely okay to do. in order to pass through. There is a requirement that the money that at least a certain percentage of funds is going to be spent by the company. And so it depends where you're going to be sending some of that funding. But those are guidelines that are in our solicitation, and another program director could potentially help you with downstream. Rehan, I have a new startup idea. Shall I launch it with an existing company or launch a new company? Rehan, I think that's absolutely up to you. I think it depends where you see this idea going and what's the best way to achieve that. Um, both have got pros and cons. If you have an existing company, for instance, you might already have federal registrations, which would allow you to be able to submit to the program as opposed to launching a new company and having to redo those federal registrations. But either one is absolutely fine, whether it's a spin-off or whether it's going to, or whether you put it under your original company, that's absolutely fine. The choice of that is really up to you and where you see some of those pros and cons coming in. Next question comes in from Rahul Smith. Thank you, by the way, for the kind words. I appreciate it. We have some time together, so we have an extra hour together. So if you have other thoughts, please do share them. I'll try to cover as many as I can. If you have specific questions about the program, obviously happy to answer as many as I can. And if you have sort of general questions about processes, feel free to share those questions too. Really, our time together is going to be, as productive as we can make it. I would advise you, if you have thoughts about submitting to the NSF SBR, how we view proposals. I have a colleague, Henry Arn, who's in a session tomorrow, which is inside the mind of the evaluators. He's going to tell you how we evaluate and how we look at things. And then, as I say, Ben Schrag actually has a whole session on the project pitch process, what goes into a project pitch, if you wanted to go deeper into that as well. So both of those sessions I will give a quiet plug for in my session. So they may be better follow-on sessions as well if you really want to take a deeper dive and have specific questions into some of the evaluation processes or how we actually can undertake a project pitch. Both of those sessions would be, I think, valuable experiences for that. But today, happy to obviously address as much as I can as we go through. Sorry, back to your question, Rahul. When applying to the project pitch, but your original application timed out. I'm not sure what your question is, Rahul. I'm not sure if this is the best venue to do it. If I was your program director, which it sounds like I was, who ran your project pitch, I would encourage you just to email me and explain the situation, and we can probably take this offline. I'm not sure that I have a great answer for you today, and I'm not sure that this is a great venue to kind of dig really deep into what's happening with some of your technical processes and some other things that you may or may not want to share in a public arena. So happy if you want to email me. That's amonk, AMONK at nsf.gov. If you just want to put your project number in and explain what's going on, I'm happy to address it kind of offline. Sorry, I couldn't be more help. Victoria, we're developing a blood test. It's proof of concept. I'm wondering what the position is, or should we try to emphasize? I appreciate the question, Victoria. I think as I've kind of outlined, I'm really not in a great position to provide feedback on anything based on a short paragraph of information today. I would encourage you to put in a project pitch. That's going to really help us understand a lot more about you and determine your suitability and eligibility for the program, and potentially provide you with feedback relatively quickly. So as in as short a time frame as up to 4 weeks. And so I would just suggest that you do that. As I say, I'm not sure this is a great venue for me to provide you with specific feedback on where you are and what you're doing or anything else. I apologize for that, but I'm not sure it's going to do service to you or justice to you, given a small amount of information that you're able to share, and also this being a public forum. So again, if you wanted to do the project pitch, I think that's a great first step. It's also a mandatory first step to be able to us to learn a little bit more about you and your company and your team and your technical goals, which I think was a great first place to start the dialogue. Next question comes in from Aniki. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Feel free to put the pronunciation in the chat, and I apologize if I got that wrong. Is there a need to register for women-owned? You will need to do certain registrations for the SBRS TTR program. Women-owned is something that you can self-certify, but you will need to actually be registered for a number of things that are listed in our solicitation. And so there are 3 registrations I think that you're actually going to need to have, and so one of these is going to be the um, the SAM registration. So you're going to need to be able to have your SAM registration. You're also going to need an SBA registration in order to be able to submit to the program. You'll need a company registration with the SBA, and you're also going to need a research.gov registration for your company. So those are the only registrations that you'll need. As I say, the women-owned business, minority-owned business, you can self-certify in the application process. Next question for Rehan. Thank you. Just clarification, my existing company is X. The new startup idea is in a different space. I really couldn't tell you, Rehan. I don't think it really matters for the NSF which company you submit under. I wouldn't think it's not a basis of which company you're applying under. And neither one would improve your chances. Both are just vehicles for you to execute the technical R&D. The merit review process from the NSF would look at the intellectual merit, the broader impacts, and the commercial potential. So, how do you move knowledge forward as your intellectual merit? Your broader impacts will be what is your impact going to be on society? And then your commercial potential will obviously be how you are going to arrive at being a self sustaining small business in the future. And those are what our review process is going to look at. And really, none of our review criteria is based around the actual company itself. So neither of them would give you a better or worse chance. And then again, it's really just a vehicle for you to be able to move that technical R&D forward. Next question comes in from Naim. What topics is NSF Health interested in? Is toxin monitoring in scope? So NSF Health is, I think I've talked about this, but happy to recover it because it is a bit of a minefield. So the health topic at the NSF is actually what we would call a life science portfolio. And it's actually comprised of a number of topic areas run by a large number of program directors. So Henry Arn has biomedical, which would include a number of biomedical polymers for drug delivery for all sorts of different application purposes, anything in that kind of biomedical space for delivery, including polymers or anything else. Eric Pierstorff would run biological technologies and also pharmaceutical technologies. Obviously, that would be more around focused around animal health, aquaculture, agriculture. Would also pharmaceutical technology wise would also include manufacturing, drug discovery. It doesn't fund therapeutic applications in the pharmaceutical technology space, but it would fund manufacturing in other areas. And then obviously we have Ed Chinchoy in medical devices. And then obviously there's myself, Alistair Monk, in the digital health arena, where we fund quite a broad spectrum of different subtopics. If you're interested, I would go look at the portfolios that we funded. It's all available on our website. The URL should be all the way at the top of the chat. If you scroll all the way back up to the top, you can see that link. And in there is a lot about our portfolio areas. It's kind of break it down a little bit better. So that is toxin monitoring may be something, obviously, because it's an impactful in health. Depending upon how you do it, you might, think of it more as a standard diagnostic test, which may be in the medical device arena, or alternatively, if it somehow was going to be deployed on sort of smart connected platform or has AI involved or anything else, it could fall into digital health. So kind of where you put that project pitch is up to you. We have pretty broad flexibility in that arena to be able to look at those different applications. So hopefully that answers your question. Next question. Frederico, does NSF support work on vaccines for domestic animals? Frederico, I think, again, this would be a question for the Pharmaceutical Technologies Program Director, would be Eric Pierstorff. If you have questions around eligibility, I would absolutely put in a project pitch and I would start that clock and I would have a Program Director look at what you want to do. It's a mandatory first step. I'm not really in a position today to tell you yes or no because I don't know a lot of other points about you. And so I think it's one of those things where this is a great introduction to the program, but my advice would be to either attend BenchRag's session tomorrow, learn more about the project pitch, to go to our website and learn more about the project pitch. But either way, I think it's probably going to be wise to put in a project pitch and then outline what it is you actually want to do and why you want to do it and the team involved in your market, and then obviously with your technical R&D tasks. And from there, we can determine suitability and eligibility for the program, and hopefully potentially even offer you a invitation to put in a proposal around that. But that's the best way to determine eligibility for the program. I'm not really in a great position today to be able to address what we fund and don't fund in specific areas, especially my area is digital health. So I think it would be good to work directly with that pharmaceutical technologies portfolio. Let me see, there's some more questions coming in. Again, apologies for pronunciation. Shams Al Azam. I submitted a project pitch, but it was rejected. The feedback I got was very vague. How do I proceed? So, if your project pitch is ultimately, if we don't invite your project pitch to put in a full proposal, then there should be feedback in there that you can address. A lot of it may be buried. It's quite a long email normally that we provide back to you. But normally, what we would ask you to do is to wait till the next cycle, the next submission cycle, and put in a new project pitch, a significantly modified and revised project pitch that would try to address some of the concerns that were raised during the review of your project pitch. And so I'm obviously not familiar with what they are, and I'm not sure this is a great venue to discuss them. However, you do have an opportunity to put in another project pitch, should you choose to, in order to address some of those concerns that were outlined during the review. Victoria, thank you for your question. Is applying existing technology. Again, Victoria, I hate to keep sounding like a broken record, but I really would encourage you to put in a project pitch. It's almost impossible for me to tell you based on a very small amount of information whether that's going to be able to fit the NSF criteria or suitability and eligibility. We do have a system to allow fast review process to give you that feedback, which is the project pitch process. So unfortunately, in today, I'm not going to be able to address your question, but I do think that if anybody has an interest in our program, then putting in a project pitch is a great first step, because it will allow us to get a little bit more information about you, initiate a dialogue with you, and then obviously potentially even invite you to put in a proposal if we believe that the work you're doing is suitable and eligible for the NSF SBRS TTR program. So as I say, unfortunately, I'm not able to kind of address eligibility questions from the chat today. Yingden, I'm a faculty member of a university and own a small business. Could I submit an application for a STTR by using my small business? So it depends, and it's never always a straightforward question, Yingden. But the point, I guess, is that if you are an equity holder in your small business, then you may not serve as a co-PI. So, i.e., you couldn't have equity in the small business and then obviously potentially fund yourself as a sub-awardee. You may want to suggest a colleague to operate as the co-PI for the sub-award, or alternatively, you may want to consider somebody who's not an equity holder to be involved in that, unless you get a waiver from the program director and from the head of the SBRS CTR program at the NSF. If your question is, can you serve as PI? You absolutely can. You could potentially go on sabbatical leave. You could take a leave of absence, and you could potentially, obviously, pursue the small business path by being the PI on the proposal, should you choose to do that also. So, if you have more questions like that, I would encourage you to reach out to whichever program director is in the topic area that you plan to kind of your small business is based around, and kind of see what they would say. But as I say, I think jumping out from the university is obviously going to be a great step. And I think you can either serve as PI within that small business as an equity holder and take it forward. If you chose to remain at the university and be the co-PI, then there may be some questions asked about whether you're an equity holder in the company, because if you are an equity holder, then in order to serve as co-PI on any STTR, you would need to be able to either get a waiver from a program director, or alternatively suggest a colleague, an academic colleague who could oversee the work at your institution, who wasn't an equity holder. Let me know if that addresses your concern. Next question comes in from Diana. Does the application require team members to already be employed by the company? The answer to that, Diana, is no. We understand that in a lot of cases, a lot of these hires and a lot of what you plan to do is going to be based on actually receiving the funding. You're probably not in a position right now to hire the personnel that you want to do, which is why you're asking for the small business, the SBRS TTR program, for the support to be able to undertake that technical R&D. So it's absolutely sufficient to identify the type of hires and the type of credentials or the type of person that you would want to work with downstream, but not actually have that person lined up. If you do, that's okay. That's fine if you do. If you have consultants or you have specific third parties you want to work with to undertake work outlined, that's okay. But if you don't have people identified, that's absolutely fine too, as long as you have obviously clearly identified what their role would be, and then what type of kind of credentials or what type of competencies you'd be looking for in somebody to undertake that work. That's absolutely fine to have a sort of a to be be determined or to be announced type person. You would still want to list them in your budget, and you'd want to discuss them in your proposal, so that people can obviously understand and see what your vision is for those hires, but you do not need to have your full team assembled prior to putting in an SBRS TTR phase one. Next question comes in from Kim. I came in late, so sorry if it was already addressed. Is it possible under a single company to submit two different projects to the same or different funding sources? If so, can one get funding for both? Hi, Kim. No problem coming in late. We did chat about this, but it's a great reminder. You have every right as a single company to be able to put in an SBRS TTR application to a number of different federal agencies. The only concern here that I'd want to make very clear is if you are successful in more than one application, then you will need to work with either the federal agencies or you'll need to work with the program directors to be able to determine how you can differentiate the projects, because it's actually illegal to hold duplicative federal funding. So you cannot have the same funding to do the same technical R&D. And so if you were to, for instance, have a proposal accepted by the NIH and by the NSF, they would either want to be very different technical tasks, or if they were the same technical tasks, you may have to modify one or more of the proposals to make sure that there is no overlap and there is no duplicative funding. So hopefully that addresses your question. Next question comes in from David Nelson. Is it necessary to have NSF research lineage? That is, do I have to show the idea is derived from prior NSF support? The answer to that, David, is no. You do not need to have prior NSF support in order to put in a project pitch or a proposal to the SBRS TTR program. We are open and welcoming to ideas from all sectors. I will say, if you have NSF research lineage, it is nice for us to be able to see how that translation process as a translational research program is being undertaken in order to obviously translate NSF research that's being funded by our colleagues who are more on the basics research side or the foundational research side. And so if you have research lineage or you're working with potentially people at universities who have NSF sponsored research that this is derived from, I think it's great to call that out, because that's something that we would be obviously interested to see how this idea has come about. But in the same way, we would always want to see where the idea has come from anyway. So whether you have research lineage or not, we'd always want to know the genesis of the idea. And so it's good to share NSF lineage if you have it. And if you don't have it, it's great to share where the genesis of the idea is coming from and what your thoughts are around it. So it's not necessary to have it, but if you do have it, it's a good thing, obviously, to include and let us know. Next question comes in from Alex. Is there a recommended approach to letters of support? There is not a recommended approach to letters of support. The letters of support are really, as I say, at phase one, we encourage and we would strongly recommend that you have 3 letters of support. These can be from anybody that would substantiate an unmet need, or potentially would be indicate downstream appetite for investment, or maybe from large patient advocacy groups. They could be anything really that would support and substantiate some of the points that you're making in the proposal. And so there isn't a recommended approach to them. The letters are really your choice, and to go along with your proposal to the NSF to help convey some information that might be valuable to support what is in your proposal. Kevin, I've been invited to submit a proposal. What are the submission deadlines? I'm working with digital health. How important is this? There's a lot of information to unpack in your question, Kevin. I appreciate it. And so the submission deadlines for this year are not yet known. So there will be a solicitation I expect to be published soon. And in that new solicitation will be the rest of the deadlines for 2024. Currently, we're operating on a March 4th, 2024 deadline for submissions. And after that, as I say, I would expect a new solicitation to be published that would have additional information in on the window submission dates for the rest of 2024. But as of right now, I don't have any further information I can share with you beyond March 4th until the new solicitation is published and cleared. Next question comes in from Kevin Altman. I have an active invitation to submit a technology under biomedical. Am I able to submit a project pitch under a different topic area, or does the full application need to be resolved? I appreciate the question. And so the answer to this is you may only have one project pitch per company per submission cycle, and you may only have one proposal under review at a time. And so if you have an invitation to put in a proposal at this time to biomedical technologies, congratulations, by the way, you would want that to be resolved before you could then submit another project pitch. And the reason for that is, even if you were invited in another topic area, you cannot submit more than one proposal. And so you would have to wait anyway for the resolution of your submitted proposal before you could take action upon any other invitation from any other topic area. So appreciate the question. I know it's a little bit of a tricky kind of area. So if you have a follow-up, do let me know. But as I say, at this time, you would want to resolve your submitted proposal before you take any action on the next submitting another project pitch, because you're only allowed one project pitch per company per cycle. Subarani, your question came in. Thank you so much. Can we submit 2 different ideas for project pitches? Unfortunately not. You may only submit one at a time. And so if you wanted to submit to energy, you could do so, or if you wanted to submit to health, you could do so, but you can't have 2 concurrent project pitches. And this is a nice segue, I think, from the last conversation, that you may only have 1 project pitch per cycle, per submission cycle, per company. So fortunately, you cannot have 2 at the same time. Hari Krishna, I appreciate your question. I think this is more of an introduction to the NSF program. In terms of support letters, at phase 2, you are allowed to have up to 5 letters of support. But I'm not sure that we need to talk about phase 2. That's in order to submit to phase 2, you must have a phase 1 at the NSF SBRS TTR program. And a lot of those phase 2 questions we would address during the course of a phase 1. And because we are a 2-phase program, i.e. you have to have phase 1 to go to phase 2, we do not offer a direct to phase 2. I think any questions today about kind of project pitches or the program or phase 1 would be kind of where I'm going to spend most of my time. So I appreciate your question, but I probably won't answer many more questions on phase 2, because those will be addressed if your proposal is meritorious and funded by the NSF at phase 1. Then we should have a lot of conversations about phase 2 as you go through. Next question comes in from Wade. I'm not sure, Wade, that I can give you good guidance on whether you should apply to the NSF or not. There's a lot of hours that go into putting a proposal together. And so I think it's one of those questions that I think it's really down to the PI and the company. If you have a technical plan that the NSF could potentially support and it has high risk, high reward type elements, then that's something that you could obviously potentially look at. It sounds like from your question that the Air Force is put all human subject research on hold. I don't know what that means for your research plans. I don't know what that means for your technical R&D. If you think it's some area that the NSF can support, then you're obviously welcome to put in a NSF SBRS TTR phase 1, but I really don't think whether you should or shouldn't put in a proposal should ever be addressed by a program director. I think that's really in the vision of the company and what your plan is. So appreciate your question, but I don't really have a great answer for you on whether you should submit to NSF or not. I think that's really going to be kind of up to the company to determine that.
The question ahead was what we're working on with the technology in small business is to help use an algorithm to pick up on diseases, early detection of diseases through looking through EMR medical charts, medical records, because we use that quite often. As you can imagine, that can fall into a lot of different buckets. It takes a whole, unless you take care of health, it can fall into geriatric care, it can fall into infections, it can fall into sepsis, depending on what pathology you're looking for, you can make a case it falls under a specific organization or a bucket. Like, are we looking after cancer cases? So I guess my question was, is it better to be broad and have like a platform solution and tackle it in whole, or just say, very narrow scope, this is kind of where it's better, and kind of go deeper in trying to make a case for being able to work on one thing under one institution. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. V. Huh. That's a good question. Um, I tend not to try to tell um, innovators and small businesses how to come into the program and what to do. But if you're, I will say this, but broadly and generally, that if you're coming in on on a very specific proposal that's 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 backed up by research, science, and it aligns with your interest and you've got data to back it up, that tends to do better than if you were to have this very broad general um and I may not be getting to what you're asking, but I we I think that those proposals that tend to do better are those that are targeting a specific um, uh, proposal that are or a innovation versus those that are very broad and general. So I think what we'll I think the thing for you to do maybe would be to send us an email again, and we can start a conversation, and then we could go from there. And I think that will probably help us kind of narrow this down. But thank you for asking the question, and appreciate you joining us on your and thanks for doing the work that you do
Yeah,
over.
I think we lost him too. I think his
Yeah, we
connection.
did.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I was like he completely went off camera and out of the. I don't see his name in the people list anymore. But we have a couple more questions, Sean. So we have a question from a person named Sean. Um, I'm just going to read the question. So, as we think about preparing for future pandemics, which organization would most likely be interested in this kind of solution? So, he has CDC, ARPA-H, BARDA, etc. But he talks about contactless vital sign monitoring, originally designed to provide standoff capability for TSA agents and other frontline workers.
Vital sign monitoring, originally designed to provide standoff capability for TSA agents and other frontline workers as we think about preparing for future pandemics. I mean, that's really interesting. Um, you know what, Sean? I think that's um, a really interesting um, proposal or an idea. As you may or may not know, I mean, I have on my slide here, CDC works 24/7 protecting America's safety, health, and security. Part of our mission space is emergency response. So we have a large emergency response mission space that's part of our portfolio. So if you send us information about what you're thinking in an abstract form, that we can kind of review that and kind of go back and forth with you and help you decide where you might want to send that, whether that fits for us. Dr. V, you dropped off. I'm going to get back to Sean in one sec. So what I was saying is that narrow, good. Why don't you send us an email to sbir@cdc.gov and we can start the conversation?
That sounds
Does
great.
that
Thank you
sound
so much,
good?
John.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for joining us and thanks for doing the work. Sorry, Sean.
Yeah, I think Dr. V rejoined the chat. He was able to rejoin. So
Yeah. Okay. So, but if we can have Sean send us a note, and we can, and if it doesn't seem to fit us, I mean, we can reach out to our colleagues at ARPA-H, BARDA, because they're our partners. But I think that because we work in this space as well, and it sounds really interesting, and it could be a fit for us. And we have a team right now that has resources for this particular mission space. So thanks for asking the question, and it potentially could be a fit for us. Over.
okay, the next question, are the slides being shared?
Yeah, we can share these slides. So we'll have to work with the team to make sure that we have everybody's contact information. Over.
Yeah, and we'll send it out later. Okay, we have another question. Someone said, I have a question around education. Miss Marilyn Carroll, she may have to come off of mute to ask because she didn't put the question in the chat. So if you want to come off mute to ask that question, you can.
Miss Carroll? Going once, twice, three times. All right, why don't we move to Wade?
Okay, so I am an MD and a wound care specialist. We have a wound care device that scrubs and derides wounds. It is on the market, looking for funding to develop further wound hygiene product lines. I do have an Air Force AFWER.
Yeah.
Okay, STTR phase 2 approved for funding, but it has been on human subject research hold for 5 months now.
Okay. So Wade, I mean, congratulations on that. You have an Air Force phase 2 for funding, but it's been on hold. I mean, congratulations on that. I'm not sure we can scrub and debride wound with little or no saline using our technology. Why don't you send us a note, Wade? I'm not sure what we can do for you, but if you want to have a conversation, please send us a note to SBIR and we can have that conversation. But thank you for doing the work that you're doing, and congratulations on that AFWORKS phase 2. Marilyn, did you want to follow up?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, guys. I was going around and around.
No,
Yeah,
that's fine.
our education. So I'm a researcher, and my research partner and I have done research around education, learning, especially people with learning disabilities, dyslexia, things of that nature. And so we develop a system that integrates with machine learning, AI, generative AI, um, Meta, you name it, we got the technology there. So his PhD is in technology, and my PhD is in the whole business operations systems and leadership. So we have published our research, and we have gotten a patent, or we have a patent pending for our information. So I'm trying to find out where this goes in the realm of applying for grants. And I noticed the business part on over on the CDC. So I didn't know what was allowed there, since we are dealing with people with disabilities.
Right. So, I will go back up here and just share this with you. So, in the HHS portfolio, if you look at that slides, we have Administration for Community Living, which is the SBIR program for individuals with disabilities. So if you look for ACL SBIR program, that's a program. It's a smaller program, but that's a program for individuals with disabilities. And my colleague Brian runs that program. And there may be an opportunity for you there. And but go ahead and send us an email to our SBIR, and detail SBIR at cdc.gov, and detail what your interests are and specific area of research is or are, so that we can then decide whether there's a fit for us, because we also have a program, and we have a center, the National Center for Birth Defects. And so that center, it may be a fit as well, depending upon whether it aligns with the research that you're doing. So there are a couple of different opportunities, and there may be a national institute at NIH too. So there are lots of different opportunities. So we'll just have to review your research and decide where it might be a fit for you. Over.
Okay. Sounds great. I know I did some work before with the CDC, speaking to them about how to work with individuals with disabilities. So we'll check it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh.
Okay, we have one more other questions. Could we ask Carol if we're going to have access to this chat, because people are sharing their email addresses to get the PowerPoint slides. So will we have access to the chat after this session ends?
Um, Jen,
Jen,
you know,
sorry, I
Jen,
called
do
you.
you know we'll have access to this chat? Jen Consalvo, Lakita, I'll copy it before the end of the session.
She said
Okay,
only you would get a copy of it, Sean.
Okay, that'll be great. Is that Jen?
No, that
yes.
Marilyn talked.
Okay.
I didn't want to jump on camera. I was just putting it in the chat. So yes, Sean and Lakita, I'll be able to send you the transcript. It won't be posted publicly, but I can share that with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, we have a /faculty, but faculty may wish to start their own small business while staying in faculty roles. Each university will have its own guidance to follow, of course, but wonder if any general insight on this on your end.
Um, Hang on one second. I'm gonna.
Okay.
Oops. Opportunities for those in academia and those entrepreneurial partnerships and boundaries of this entrepreneurship. The SEED website shows opportunity for a small business to partner with a nonprofit faculty, but faculty may wish to start their own small business while staying in faculty roles. Each university will have its own guidance to follow, of course, but wonder if any general insight on this on your end. Mahalo. Uh, Mahalo. So it sounds like somebody's from Hawaii or has been spent time on island. Um, what I'll say is that CDC, this is more of an NIH activity and program, and so I don't have. I'm going to be honest with you. I do not have deep insight into that program. What I will ask for you to do um, is to either send us that question, or we'll follow up with you and and connect you with the right people, because there are our friends and colleagues, and we'll be able to answer that question. I'm not going to be able to answer that question. What I do know is that there are great programs around entrepreneurial partnerships, activities, support. NIH has an amazing program, um, and an amazing team. There are partners and there are friends, and so you, yeah, there, yeah. So that's what I'll say, and we will follow up with you. But I can't answer any more than that right now. Over.
All right. Someone asks, is any resources slash programs to support first time applicants?
The, so um, programs to support first time applicants. So there are programs to support first time applicants both within house. We encourage our program directors and um, our PIs within the agency to engage and support program or new small businesses. And then again, um, we encourage those who are first time applicants to apply for the Technical and Business Assistance Program, that the TABA program. So if you're a first time small business and you are applying, please look at the Technical and Business Assistance that's available for all small businesses and apply for that. That it's $6,500 for the phase one, and then $50,000 for phase two, and that's you're eligible for that as a funded phase one or phase two. And so we encourage you to apply for that as part of your program's support. And there are lots of technical support that comes with that tab of funding. Over.
Okay. Have another question by Mike Banfield. The CDC annual BAA usually contains topics on insect and tick-borne diseases, but they have funded only one grant in these topics in the last 2 years. Does the CDC ever post topics to the SBIR?
So, for those that may not be aware, CDC also publishes what's called a broad agency announcement, which is an extramural research mechanism that is for others, for other uh, entities to apply for. And so the when we talk about the program descriptions and research areas of interest, the way that CDC goes about soliciting the topic areas, and I'm putting that in hand quotes, for the grant omnibus solicitation or the contract solicitation, is that we go out to each of the national centers that participate in the solicitation, whether it's the grant omnibus or the contract solicitation, and they bring back to us what the research areas of interest are for each one of the national centers. And so, to answer the question, Mike, I think it was Mike, is that we have the National Center for Emerging Zoonotic and Infectious Diseases, and they may prioritize a research area for vector-borne diseases, which would include um, tick bites, tick infections. And so that may be part of the SBIR omnibus solicitation. It may be a topic area of interest. And I'm looking right now. So for those that, I'm just going to peruse it really quick. Hang tight. So under NCEZID, there's the for NCEZID, they talk the mission for that particular center is to prevent disease, disability, and death caused by a wide range of infectious diseases, focusing on diseases that have been around for many years, emerging diseases, or those that are new or just recently identified, and zoonotic diseases spread from animals to people. Um, Research to address reducing health disparities and increasing health equity is strongly encouraged. So, one of the topic areas of interest is antibiotic resistant healthcare associated infections This is the current topic area. And the other is, this is answering your question, vector-borne diseases, detection, prevention, diagnosis, and response. Bacterial and viral vector-borne diseases are transmitted to humans primarily through vectors such as infected mosquito, tick, or flea. Some of these diseases have long been present in the United States, while others have been recently emerged. So the answer to the question is yes. Over.
Okay. Okay, so we have another question by Elizabeth Fox. She wrote, I work for hospital libraries. I did talk to the National Library of Medicine, but I'm not sure they can support my small business. Would CDC be at all interested in a hospital library small business?
Okay. Where is that one, Lakita? I can't see it.
It's there at 1536. It's Elizabeth Fox. It's under Jen's comments.
1536.
Mm-hmm.
Is it way up there?
No, it's
Oh,
1536.
1536. Good
Yeah.
afternoon. Okay, I guess mine are different. Okay. Can you read it to me again, please?
Yes, I work for hospital libraries. I did talk to the National Library of Medicine, but I am not sure they can support my small business. Would CDC be at all interested in a hospital library small business?
That's really interesting. I don't know, to be honest. What would be helpful is if you were to send us, Elizabeth, um, an email describing what your proposal would be, and then we can then start having a conversation. That's really interesting. I don't know if that's something that would fit, but I would love to hear more about it. Thank you for suggesting that. Over.
Okay, let's go back. Someone asked, can I submit an SBIR proposal to NSF in February and to CDC in April?
You can, but you have, one has to be very clear. And if not, if you've not, I'm sure you've heard this before, but if you have not heard this before, one cannot submit the same application to another federal agency. And if you do, you have to be very clear and make it and notify the federal agencies that you've submitted an application to the other federal agency. So if you submit an application with a similar work, you have to make sure that the agency is aware that you have an application sitting at NSF if you submit that application to CDC. Over.
All right. Okay, and then Jen also shared some links for some resources. People had questions about help for assistance with putting applications together. So she dropped some links in the chat to help with local resources for application development. So we have another question. Brian Bentley, my company has licensed technology from a university that was funded by NIH to detect sepsis in 1.5 hours. We are working to further develop and commercialize it. Would the CDC be the agency to help us do that?
I can't, without having more detail, I can't answer that question. So, but I will tell you that the center that I just spoke about, the National Center for Emerging Zoonotic and Infectious Diseases, one of their major priorities or research areas of interest is preventing hospital acquired infections, preventing um, sepsis, other infectious infections. And so that would be an area that would be of interest to that national center. But without more information, I can't really answer that question on this in this forum. So send us the details in a one pager, and we can then review that and come back and forth with you, and then share that potentially with the leadership, extramural research leadership of the Office of Infectious Disease Group, and then we can get back to you in more detail. Over.
Okay, I think that is all the questions in the chat that I've captured. If I missed a question, someone please drop it back in the chat because I missed it, but I don't think I missed any questions. But as of now, I think we've addressed all the questions that was in the chat box. It's okay. So Brian Bentley asked, what is the other group you mentioned?
Other group.
I think it was NIH. Is it NIH?
So yeah, so I'm going to go back in slides. So the HHS is the large umbrella. So that's the large federal agency. And then we have the National Institutes of Health. We have the Centers for Disease Control, the Food and Drug Administration, ACL, and then it's ARPA-H. That might be the one you were thinking about. So ARPA-H is a new group within our team. Hang on one second. And that's under ARPA-H is under HHS, and they've just recently joined our SBIR team. And I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to, but I'm going to put that in the chat.
Okay.
It's the advanced research. Here, I want to put it in there. Hold on. I don't know if I can do it. Paste. Oh goodness, no, it's not letting me do it.
And then, Sean, just for reference purposes for everybody that's still on, could you elaborate a little bit more, I guess, as far as the omnibus solicitation, how all of this like these agencies fall under the same umbrella, and how NIH pretty much reviews the application and receives them for all the agencies?
Right. So thanks, Lakita. So many years ago, because CDC is a smaller operational division and we have a smaller, what's called SBIR set aside, we deemed it that it was most efficient and it was most efficient for CDC to sign on to the larger NIH mechanisms for many reasons, to be able to reach out to the larger SBA, small SBA team, to the small business community, to facilitate the grant process for a whole litany of reasons. And so CDC entered into this, what we call an interagency agreement with NIH, to conduct the receipt. In other words, all the applications that come in for the grant omnibus solicitation come directly to NIH, and then NIH conducts the review of the applications that come into NIH, and they do the receipt of the applications, the review, and the referral of the applications to the appropriate CDC centers, institutes, and offices. And so that process has worked really well, and we continue to improve that process over time. And it also develops relationship between all of us. So we actually exchange applications. So there are times that CDC will get an application and it's best that it goes to NIH. And so we'll pitch that application to NIH. And then there's other times that NIH institutes will have applications. So let's say the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease at NIH has applications that they think that application will probably be better for the National Center for HIV, hepatitis, and it's NCHHSTP. And so they'll give us an application. So we've all become just a large team, and we all work together as one HHS. And so I hope that's helpful, specifically around the grant process. And I'm going to just share real quick. ARPA-H is the Advanced Research Project Agency for Health. ARPA-H, research funding agency that supports transformative biomedical and health breakthroughs, ranging from molecular to societal, to provide health solutions for all. They've come on board. This slide will then update that. So ARPA-H under HHS and closely working with NIH is now part of the overall team here at HHS. Oh, and then the link for NIH TABA
And
is
Sean, we are officially at time, so it's
oh yeah
3:55 Central Time. So, yeah.
okay. Well, I want to thank everybody. I just stuck that in there for Rolanda. So that's it for the presentation today. We want to thank you all for the work that you do in the field, and for I'm just going to go ahead and close this out. I'm going to stop sharing. Stop sharing.
Email us at the sbir@cdc.gov email that I shared throughout the presentation. And whatever inquiries, whatever abstracts that you want to send us for review, please feel free to do that. And thank you all so much. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. All right, I'm going to see if Sean come back on, but that's the end of our presentation, our session. So thank you all.